Okay, so it's like a week now after the last segment you saw. Um, Basically, it's been hard to get time actually off of school and all the rest of the stuff we have to do around the farm to actually work on this. But we got to get moving, or else we'll start losing parts and you start losing memory of how everything went back together. Trust me, I know I did that on that Duramax truck. Dragged that out over the course of a couple months, and it's not the same. So we're gonna try to get to work on this, and I will set you guys to time lapse. Okay, so we got the alternator bracket, power steering pump, all power steering pump hoses. Got that top cover off. Start pulling some of the wiring. It's really hard. Those little the plug-ins for the injectors, they're all sticky. So right now I'm in the process of trying to fight out this AC compressor. As far as I can tell, it's only 4 bolts to hold it. This one bolt, it's right back down here, and there's not enough room to get a socket, and a wrench doesn't act like it wants to fit on there. So I'm gonna have to go under the car to get that. So yeah, just gotta get back to work. I'm not gonna pull the water pump, I don't think. Uh, it's pretty gritty and sticky, but I think we'll hold off on that, and I might end up using it as a lift point or part of a lift point. So we'll hold off on pulling that. So yeah, the next part, just get that out, and then probably exhaust bolts and figure out what else is holding this wiring harness on the back. So I'll set you guys back to time lapse. Okay, so again, we're another week out from the last segment. That's about all we can do. But we got the top end torn down off camera. It took me a while to get it. Also got that AC compressor out. That took quite a bit of work. Getting that one bowl out was kind of a pain, but I got it out and got the bracket for it off. Also went ahead and pulled the water pump. It was just 6 bolts, 3 on each side. Got that pulled. Got most of the wiring harness apart. Just went ahead and took fuel rails off first, and then all the intake manifold bolts. So next step, I guess, will be try to get the starter and all that wiring done. I also got the exhaust manifold bolts, or the exhaust. Let's see if I can get you. Got the exhaust downpipe bolts off, so we're free there. We're gonna need these manifolds to stay on the car because that's the only lift point we have on this V8. The V6s, 4.3 liter, I believe they did have lift brackets. This one doesn't though, so that's what we're gonna have to lift off of. So I got to get that pipe apart down there, and then I gotta get the starter cleared and get those wires apart, and hopefully we can get all the bottom end wiring out. And there's a cord that goes down the back here, and I haven't been able to figure out what it goes to in the manual, so I'll go probably check someone else's YouTube video and see where that goes, and if not, then I'll just find out where it goes. But we'll try to get that, and then we should be able to lift this whole harness out, or at least out of our way. So I'll set you guys a time lapse, and we'll get that starter pulled. Alrighty, we got the exhaust out. I got that skid plate out. Hardest part I had is getting that exhaust pipe out. It sits right under here. Then it connects right up there. Then it drops down right under the transmission here and goes and meets up with that guy. And the way it was shaped, I don't have enough height under here to actually get it all the way up. Or get it all the way out. So I had to cut a piece of it. I've done it before. I'll show you guys. I went ahead and unplugged the sensors. I didn't want to unscrew the sensors. But when I was about, I don't know, 12, 13 years old, I went ahead and they'd quoted my mom and dad, like, I don't know, I think it was like $1,200 or $1,300 to put new catalytic converters on. And we were like, nah, we'll just go ahead and cut them because we don't have emissions yet. So that's what I did there. And as you can see, the welding job is pretty bad. It was a flux core. And I was welding under the car, so I couldn't even hardly see what I was doing. I missed the whole section up on top because I couldn't even reach it. But that was that. So I tried to get the starter out. The starter's held on by two 13mm bolts. But I popped the bolts out, and now I gotta get that cable disconnected, but not seeing enough room. So what I'm gonna have to do is pull this brace here. Been trying to work on these bolts. The two over there on the driver's side weren't that bad, but the ones right here on the passenger side, they were pretty darn tight. So we're gonna go ahead, try to pull those guys, and yeah, hopefully we can get the starter out. Next thing I can think of is disconnect the transmission wiring, and then I'll have to drop out both of the front shaft here to the front transaxle or differential, and then off that transfer case I'll just disconnect that rear housing. I got the skid plate for the transfer case off, so that's a lot more accessible. So I gotta drain that out, and yeah, I'll have to disconnect that off the transmission. And I think I'm gonna need to get more height on this vehicle. I don't think it's gonna be able to get high enough to be able to drop that down. So that'll be the next step. So I'll set you guys back to time lapse and we'll get all that done. Okay guys, camera shut off on me while we were raising it up. I know, dirty cat. So what I did while you guys weren't watching was I got those drive shafts pulled. Sorry about that. Got the tires pulled. We got the whole thing raised up quite a bit more. We're almost topped out here on our jack stands. Got our tires pulled. Should make it a little easier. What else do we do? Okay, so I got most of the electrical harness off of the transfer case there. So we're gonna get ready to pull the braces on the transfer case. It was just some 11mm bolts holding these drive shafts onto the axle. So we're gonna go ahead. I'm gonna finish pulling what's left of the wiring and whatnot that's holding the transfer case, and then we're gonna pull the 6 nuts that hold that transfer case onto the transmission, and then we'll pull this brace here, and this brace should allow us, well, we're gonna have to get the jack under the transmission to hold up the transmission, but starting to wonder if maybe we shouldn't just drop the transmission under. But I gotta measure first, because I'm not sure that even at our jack stands topped out, we have enough room to clear the transmission under. So we'll go see if we can get that figured out. We may drop the transmission, but if not, then we'll just keep with our original plan, pulling the transmission and motor as one unit. So we'll set you guys a time lapse and we'll go from there. Okay, we got our transfer case pulled. Camera fell over. Sorry about that, but we got it pulled out, and it was a pain in the butt. We had this connection here was the hardest one to get, and for whatever reason it didn't want to let go. But we finally got it broke loose. Just had chunks of paper gasket. I went ahead. We had our transmission jack on the transmission, so I decided to gamble. After reading on this, I was pretty certain it was the 45 pound. I think there was 2 versions, but I'm pretty sure this was the 45 pound. So I just went ahead and lifted this out just with myself, no jacks. Pulled that out, and we got it down without tearing up any of the seal or scratching. The hard part when you're pulling this out, you don't want to gum up that back of the transmission housing with these bolts, or you'll get a leak going. We got everything, including our vent hose, without chewing up our plastic vent hose. I was pretty happy with that. So we got most of everything out, but I think we're gonna go ahead and drop the transmission. So instead of trying to pull it all at once, because the more I look at this setup here, I think our engine's too far back. So we're gonna go ahead. Trey's pulling those manifold bolts so we can reach that starter. The starter didn't want to cooperate earlier. As you can see, there's really no way to reach it from here. Tried reaching it from the other side. It seems like it's binding on something, probably one of the motor mounts. So we're gonna go ahead, pull the manifold, and then go ahead and pull the starter, and that'll allow us to get our torque converter bolts. So we'll get our torque converter bolts pulled, and I'm hoping we're high enough. I believe we've got about 18 inches of clearance here, and that transmission bell housing I think is like 17-18 inches. So we're gonna be darn close, but we'll go ahead and give it a shot. Trey here will get that pulled off, and we'll see you in the next segment. Is that right here at the starter, when I pulled it out, I had access to the torque converter bolts. You can't see them, but I went ahead. I had these torque converter bolts, and not sure if you can see that, but there's no actual bolt head to be attached to. It's just a 9mm, or is it 8? It's a 9mm Allen wrench, I do believe. So anyway, I fit the Allen wrench attachment onto our 1/2-inch socket, put some torque on that one popped pretty nicely. And then the other one, I went ahead and it stripped on me. I don't have any great way to access it, so I think we've kind of forced ourselves. We're gonna have to pull motor and transmission all as one assembly. I was thinking we might have room to drop the transmission, but that plan's kind of out now since we can't get our torque converter off. So we're gonna go ahead, get our motor mount bolts loose there, try to find any of our last wiring or anything, and then we're gonna go ahead. We got to put tires back on this thing, set it back down, and roll it backwards so we have room for our cherry picker here. And we'll go ahead and see if we can get them pulled. Okay guys, big moment here. We got everything disconnected, all the lines, all the hoses. So we're gonna go ahead. I'm getting ready to get the chains on. We thought we had everything disconnected, but then we realized that back there the fuel lines are bolted to the transmission bell housing. So we got them broke loose. Now we're getting ready. We're gonna move our cherry picker over and then get our chains lined up, and then we'll go ahead and pull our motor mount bolts. There's 3 on each side. We got the jack under the transmission just to hold it up, and then should be able to kind of pick it up. We'll have to tilt it back and then just kind of come up and out with it. We'll see how we can do. It's going to be kind of tricky getting a chain further back in there. Really easy to get a chain here, but I think I'm going to need a 3rd chain to stabilize so that this engine doesn't spin on us. So we'll go ahead. We'll set you guys a time lapse, and we'll get this motor pulled. Yes, finally, we got it out. That took a lot of work, but it always does. So when we pulled it out, the drain pan on the transmission didn't really want to come out. It sheared on us. Not really sheared, stripped. So we had a gob of fluid just pouring out of the back the whole time. Made a big mess on our floor, but we can clean it all up. So what we're going to do with the old Suburban here is just close the hood, wrap up the ends of the wiring, and just push it out for the time being. So that we can get everything swapped out. We've got our Summit motor and our Performa built transmission inside the boxes. So we're going to be transferring the parts we need onto here. And then, yeah, that'll be how we're going to do that. So it's late in the evening. Me and Trey are just going to clean up a bit, put away our stuff, and we'll come back. It's Sunday, so it'll probably be a little bit before we can get to work on it. But we'll see you guys for the next segment. Okay, we got our engine and transmission out. We just moved them out, plugged up. We're gonna tear down this motor anyway, but I want to try to avoid getting a gob of water inside of it. It's kind of cold tonight, so we don't want to get too much water in it. What we're gonna do, just try to avoid the holes, but get the majority of grime off. As you can see, we've had an oil leak all around this timing cover, bottom of the oil pan, back of the transmission, and then we'll try to get some of the top. We're gonna probably avoid a lot of that, but just clean it up, make it easier on ourselves tearing it down. As you know or don't know, I've torn down a lot of dirty engines, and they're not near as fun to work on as clean engines. So we're gonna go ahead, clean it up, and we'll set you guys a time lapse. So now that we got it cleaned off, as best we could, it's a little late tonight, so we won't be able to soak it in simple green like I normally would. We're just gonna clean the rest by hand, but we got the majority of it knocked off. So I'm gonna go ahead, wheel this back into the shop. We'll go ahead and pull spark plugs and drain plugs, and we'll go ahead and oil up those cylinders real good, because I bet you we did get some water in there. So we'll go ahead, put it up for tonight. We'll see you guys again in the morning.